The pituitary gland has two lobes, the anterior and the posterior lobe. The anterior pituitary is composed of epithelial tissues. Posterior pituitary, or your neural hypophysis, is composed of neural tissue from the hypothalamus. It is a small gland in the sella turcica, at the base of the brain, connected to the hypothalamus by the pituitary stalk, hypophyseal stalk. It secretes trophic hormones. Okay, here is your supraoptic nuclei and paraventricular nuclei is where they're the source of your oxytocin and vasopressin. This is your posterior pituitary. This is your anterior pituitary, the posterior pituitary. You note that the blood vessels, and this is your posterior pituitary. From the hypothalamus, this is your stalk, and this is your posterior pituitary. This is your anterior pituitary. And the hormones from this cell body of the neurons, your supraoptic nuclei and paraventricular nuclei, they produce the hormones and bring it to the posterior pituitary gland. And that is where they are stored because they are neural tissues needed by the body. And the hormone goes into the capillary and to the general circulation and to the target tissues. For example, your antidiuretic hormone, your vasopressin, it acts on the kidney. So it goes to the kidney. Two neurohormones, your oxytocin and ADH, vasopressin, both are peptides. They are not steroids. Transported in the secretory vesicles via the axons. Your hypothalamic releasing and inhibitory hormones control the secretion of the anterior pituitary. Thyroid, hypothalamic, releasing and inhibitory hormones. So they control the anterior pituitary. You have your thyrotropin releasing hormone. It is a peptide of only 3 amino acids. Very short, no? Stimulates the secretion of your thyroid stimulating hormone from the anterior pituitary. Your gonadotropin releasing hormone is longer, 10 amino acids. Stimulates the release of your FSH and LH from your gonadotropes. Then you have your corticotropin, releasing hormone. This is a larger molecule made up of 41 amino acids, and it stimulates the secretion of adrenocorticotropic hormone by the corticotropes of the anterior pituitary. Growth hormone releasing hormone. This is also a big molecule composed of 44 amino acids, and this stimulates the secretion of your growth hormone. What cells in the anterior pituitary? Your somatotropes. They are the ones that release your growth hormone, releasing hormone. Growth hormone, inhibitory hormone, or your somatostatin, inhibits secretion of your growth hormone, also by the somatotropes. Prolactin, inhibiting hormone. It is done by dopamine, a catecholamine. Inhibits secretion of prolactin by the lactotropes in the anterior pituitary. So contains 5 types of endocrine cells: your corticotropes, thyrotropes, gonadotropes, and your somatotropes and lactotropes. So corticotropes produces adrenocorticotropic hormone. Thyrotropes produces TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. And gonadotropes produces FSH and LH, gonadotropins, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Your somatotropes produces growth hormones, and your lactotropes, prolactin releasing hormone. Your corticotropes produces adrenocorticotropic hormone, a 39 amino acid peptide derived from pro-opiomelanocortin. The only active hormones secreted by these cells. Your corticotropes only produces an active ACTH. It acts on the adrenal cortex by binding to the melanocortin 2 receptor, MC2 receptor. ACTH secretion is pulsatile with pronounced diurnal pattern, peak in early morning and very low in late PM. That's why you get drowsy around 5 to 6 p.m. because your cortisol is low at that time because of the diurnal pattern. Cortisol exerts a negative feedback on the pituitary by suppressing the pro-opiomelanocortin gene expression and decreases ACTH secretion. From the anterior pituitary, you remember we had this yesterday? Pro hormone. Then you have your pro hormone, pro-opiomelanocortin. From pro-opiomelanocortin, sorry. You have your ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. Okay. Multiple regulators of secretion. Hey, this is not the one. Okay. One is stress. Stress effects are mediated through the corticotropin releasing hormone, your ADH, and CNS. Neurogenic fear can increase the secretion of your cortisol, and systemic infection can also increase. And a response to many forms of severe stress can override the negative feedback from high levels of cortisol. Just like I mentioned yesterday, if you have an emergency surgery and it happens in the evening or late afternoon, usually the patient after surgery cannot sleep because of high levels of cortisol, because the stress is there is neurogenic stress, fear in the surgery, and it increases the level of cortisol. And the level of cortisol, you notice that in the morning the cortisol is high, the level is high. That is nature's way of empowering you to wake you up so that you won't feel drowsy. You have the energy to sustain throughout the day, to overcome your stresses or your work, like that. And in the evening, supposed to be, the level is already lower. But since there is a surgery, this one is a kind of stress. And so this will increase the level of cortisol in the body. And the patient cannot sleep because the patient is energized. Just like if you have systemic infection, the patient cannot also sleep. That means the hypothalamus has the ability to reset the set point of the hypothalamic pituitary axis in response to stress. Thyrotropes from the anterior pituitary produces TSH, thyrotropin. This is a glycoprotein like your FSH and LH. A heterodimer composed of alpha and beta subunits. Glycosylation of the subunits can increase their stability in the circulation and the affinity and specificity to their receptors. Your TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, stimulates the thyroid to produce your T3 and T4, your thyroid hormones. It has a strong tropic effect on the thyroid gland. TRH, prohormone released through a diurnal rhythm also. Highest during overnight hours and lowest during dinner time. TRH, unlike your corticotropin releasing hormone, is inhibited by stress, such as physical stress, starvation, and if there is an infection. There is no thyroid releasing hormone. Decrease, no gonadotropes. Your gonadotropins produces FSH and LH, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. These regulate the function of the gonads in both sexes, the male and the female, segregated into different secretory granules. So this allows independent secretion of FSH by LH by the gonadotropes. Both the follicle stimulating and luteinizing hormone promotes secretion of testosterone in the male and estrogen and progesterone in the female. This FSH alone increases the secretion of inhibin in both sexes. LH doesn't participate in secretion of inhibin. Regulation of secretion of gonadotropic releasing hormone and luteinizing hormone releasing hormone. They are produced as prohormone, released also in a pulsatile manner, and uses negative feedback mechanism. Your prolactin is a big molecule, 199 amino acid, single chain protein. Like growth hormone, its receptor is coupled to the JAK-STAT pathway, signal transducer, JAK-STAT signaling pathway. Half-life of prolactin is only 20 minutes, so its effect is short. Your lactotrope is, your prolactin is not associated with any binding proteins in the plasma. So they swim. They only need swimsuits and swimming trunks, secreted in both male and female. But the function of prolactin in the male is not known. Yet, perhaps you will be the one to do the research on this. It is not associated with a hormone axis. Functions of prolactin on mammary glands, growth and development of glandular tissue, and ductal proliferation. Synthesis of breast milk, your casein and lactalbumin. Initiate and maintain lactation, especially when the mother is nursing her child, a newborn infant. Production and secretion are normally suppressed by dopamine. This is a prolactin inhibiting hormone from the hypothalamus, your dopamine. It has a negative feedback loop with hypothalamus to adjust the release of your dopamine. Disruption of the pituitary stalk and hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal vessels results in an increase of prolactin levels, but decrease of your ACTH, TSH, FSH, LH, and growth hormone. It doesn't affect the prolactin. So increased prolactin secretion is done by nursing and breast manipulation. By estrogen, oxytocin, thyroid releasing hormone, and sleep and stress. Prolactin is increased, but with estrogen, your oxytocin and your TRH and sleep. That's why it is necessary for the mother to relax and sleep a lot when the mother is nursing, so that there will be milk in the breast. Somatotrope, growth hormone, somatotropin. This is also a big molecule, 191 amino acid, similar to your prolactin and human placental lactogen. There are multiple forms of your growth hormone that constitute a sort of family of hormones. And the 191 amino acid form is the predominant form of your growth hormone. Still follows the JAK-STAT signaling pathway, your growth hormone, and your prolactin. Your growth hormone binding protein, 50% of this, of growth hormone bind to this while in the blood. Thus, its half-life is extended for more than 20 minutes. Some doesn't bind though. Regulation of your growth hormone secretion. Secretion is increased by gonadotropic hormone releasing hormone and sleep, stress, exercise, hypoglycemia, amino acids, and ghrelin. What is ghrelin? It is a hormone in the stomach. I think you have already taken this up with your GIT, that increases the appetite of the individual. Your ghrelin. Sleep can also increase growth hormone secretion. That's why our grandmothers will always let us sleep after lunch. And so there is really a reason for that, because growth hormone is increased in the release when you sleep. And when there is stress, of course, the physiologic stress, just like when you let the child play, it can increase growth hormone secretion. And exercise. So you let the child run around. Do not let the child just sit there and play with the, gadgets. That is the problem at the moment. Then hypoglycemia can also increase growth hormone secretion. But it doesn't mean that you have to starve your children so that they will grow taller. That is irrational. Amino acids and ghrelin. Secretion is decreased by somatostatin and somatomidine. Obesity. Obesity. This is the problem with the children nowadays. Many are obese. Why? Because always sitting down, no more exercise. Always sitting down, playing the gadget, and eating lots of sugar. So hyperglycemia. Secretion is also decreased by high free fatty acids. High free fatty acids. That means the diet is fatty. Fat, sweet. What is the result? Obesity. Sweet, sugar, and fatty foods. So the result is obesity. What will happen to the child? The appearance of the child. The child is stunted, okay, but fat, okay? Parang bola. Growth hormone itself and cortisol will also, growth hormone, because of negative feedback, okay? And cortisol will also decrease the secretion of growth hormone. Okay. Growth hormone releasing hormone will increase growth hormone secretion and growth hormone gene expression. It is a member of the vasoactive intestinal polypeptide, secretin glucagon family, also from a prohormone. Somatostatin is a peptide from the hypothalamus that inhibits the synthesis and release of growth hormone, and TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, from the anterior pituitary. Ghrelin. This is a peptide that is a potent stimulator of growth hormone secretion. Increases the appetite and may serve as a signal to coordinate nutrient acquisition with growth. This comes from the stomach and hypothalamus. That's why a child eats a lot, right? Because they need that for growth. But you have to let your child play, run around, let the child run around. And you know, if there is sound of a child in a house, the aura is positive. Not for COVID, the aura, the energy in the house is positive. That's why if you would like your house to have, if you enter a house, sometimes you can feel the energy, right? If it is light, if it is heavy, like that. If you would like to have a light feeling, light, the aura is positive in that house. You let a child enter that house and run around and play. Gather children from the neighborhood. If you don't have children, that is probably one reason why we also go to grandmother's house on weekends, right? Yeah, we go there and play. Because, so there is a reason all along. Somatomidins, insulin growth factor 1, insulin-like growth factor 1. This is produced in the liver upon stimulation by growth hormone. IGF-1 inhibits growth hormone synthesis and secretion by the pituitary and hypothalamus through a long negative feedback loop. Of course, if there is too much supply of your growth hormone, it has to be regulated. It has to be stopped. So this is one way through a long negative feedback loop towards the pituitary and the hypothalamus. Growth hormone exert a short negative feedback loop on the release of your growth hormone releasing hormone from the hypothalamus. Growth hormone also increases somatostatin release. Physiological functions of your growth hormone or your somatotropin. You have to remember this. Your growth hormone is somatotrope, okay? Your somatomedin is your IGF-1. Growth hormone does not function through a target gland, but it exerts its effect in almost all tissues of the body. Its indirect effects is mediated by somatomedin, your IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor. They promote linear growth of the long bones. They promote visceral growth and cartilage growth and periosteal growth. See? Lahat is affected by your growth hormone. The direct effect is on the metabolism. The direct effect of growth hormone is on the metabolic action, on the protein, carbohydrate, fat, like that. On protein metabolism, it is anabolic. It is anabolic. It increases the uptake of amino acids by the cells and activates granular endoplasmic reticulum. It increases RNA formation, increases transcription, okay? And so that there will be a positive nitrogen balance because of uptake of amino acids, okay? On carbohydrate metabolism, it decreases utilization of glucose for energy. It is an energy sparer, a carbohydrate sparer. Increase glycogen storage. Decrease glucose uptake. So it has a diabetogenic effect and it has an anti-insulin action. You have to remember these things because in the process of forming the questions, we tend to exchange these terminologies just to let you be confused, just to, test if you really know the lessons, okay? So remember, decrease glucose uptake. So actually, if you come to think of it, you don't need too much sugar. The child doesn't need too much sugar on the diet. But be sure that if you give the carbohydrate, should be the correct form of sugar. What is the correct form of sugar? It has to be glucose. It doesn't have to be fructose, because fructose, the body will not metabolize the fructose, will not use, because fructose is complex sugar, right? So it is glucose. And what is corn sugar? Corn syrup, that is fructose. And where do you find fructose? Where do you find corn syrup? In Jollibee, in your fast foods, okay? In your fast foods, where you'd put that on your pancake, that's fructose. And we have to watch out, because that is the bitter sugar. Bitter sugar. It's not the correct one. If you use sugar, it has to be glucose. And what is a glucose sugar? Where do you get glucose sugar? From cane, sugar cane. That's glucose. So that is a healthy sugar. But it doesn't mean that because it is a healthy sugar, you have to take in lots of sugar cane, okay? Because I noticed that when I was studying in Hong Kong, when we go around the city, I noticed that there are lots of sugar cane, small, stand on the corner that grinds sugar cane for sugar cane juice. That is quite healthy, but it doesn't mean that you have to take in lots of that, because that's too much and your pancreas will be burdened. So you will develop, if you make it a habit to drink every day lots of glucose, then you will develop diabetes later on. I will come to that later. So because endocrine is so intertwined with biochemistry, so that you have to remember all these terminologies, okay? And on lipid metabolism, it is ketogenic. Your growth hormone is ketogenic. Increases lipolysis. So it has a protein sparing action. Increases free fatty acid for energy production. Increases hepatic release of acetoacetic acid. Okay, so growth hormone uses free fatty acid instead of glucose. Okay, instead it has decreased utilization of glucose for energy. Okay, And so instead, it uses lipids, fat, as a source of energy production. So you notice the children, these normal children, they're all arms and legs, right? They don't grow fat. That is normal children that runs around. You notice they are all arms and legs. Ang liit ng mga arms and legs. They don't grow fat no matter how they eat a lot. They don't get obese if they run around. That means if they exercise. But if they sit continuously in front of the gadgets, oh, of course, obesity can develop. Even if they use free fatty acid as source for energy production. Deficiency causes growth retardation in children, such as psychosocial dwarfism. Children who are abused or under intense emotional stress have lower growth rates due to decreased growth hormone secretion by the pituitary. Children also who work, just like the child actors and actresses. Are you familiar with the child actor before, Nino Molak? He used to work as a child, started working at the age of 3 already. And so what happens? Nino is retarded. Stunted growth, because of this. So that is psychosocial dwarfism. Also, the children who are abused at home or in the orphanage. So they are under intense emotional stress. Their growth is also stunted. Laron dwarf lack growth hormone receptors, but have normal growth secretion, normal growth hormone secretion. So instead, they lack the receptor in the target tissues. They lack the growth hormone binding protein. That's why they end up stunted in their growth. One, hypopituitarism dwarfism. All anterior pituitary hormones are deficient. With a deficiency of your gonadotropins, they do not mature sexually and will remain infertile because they also lack your gonadotropins. Your African pygmy have normal serum growth hormone levels, but the IGF levels are low. There is also a partial defect in your hormone receptors, okay? Oversecretion of your growth hormone will cause gigantism. Due to growth hormone oversecretion, for example, if there's a tumor in the pituitary, and this tumor occurs before the closure of the long epiphysis of the long bones, so the child is abnormally tall, but hyperglycemic, diabetic, so the tendency is the child dies early. Oversecretion in the adults causes acromegaly. Growth hormone oversecretion after epiphyseal closure. Characteristics of your acromegaly: spade hands, large feet, large nose, large jaw bones, prominent frontal and maxillary bosses, osteoarthritic, insulin-resistant diabetes. So there is also a short lifespan. The two neurohormones are your oxytocin and ADH. Both are synthesized as prohormone. Functions of your posterior pituitary. They are posterior pituitary hormones. This is your neurohypophysis. Your antidiuretic, your vasopressin, increases the permeability of renal tubular cells to retain water. So antidiuresis. Your oxytocin promotes uterine contraction during labor when the pregnancy is in full term and the mother starts to undergo labor to deliver the term baby, full term baby. So oxytocin level is high to promote uterine contraction. And this helps in the milk expression during nursing of the baby. Responsible for the milk letdown during nursing. Your prolactin is responsible for the production of the milk, but for the milk to go down through the mammary gland, it needs oxytocin. Milk let down during nursing. Stimuli of your ADH secretion. Hyperosmolality. That means more solute or solvent. More solute, okay? Low blood volume. Because the body needs the increase pressure. It has to increase the blood volume so that the patient will not die. So it has to increase reabsorption of water to increase the pressure. That's why if you have you are dehydrated, for example, and your blood pressure is low, or sometimes you feel as if you're dizzy, especially when you are dehydrated. You drink a glass of water and you notice that you will feel better already. And that is the action of your antidiuretic hormone. Low blood pressure, your ADH is at its high level. Upright posture, orthostatic hypotension, can also stimulate the secretion of your antidiuretic hormone. How about the inhibitor? Inhibitor of ADH secretion is hypoosmolality, opposite to your hyperosmolality. Hypoosmolality, that means more water, and in recumbent position. That's why when you when you sleep, later you will wake up because you feel like urinating. Okay, your ADH at that point is low, so anti-diuretic, you will undergo diuresis. Today, our lecture is short. We're done.